So we have Frank Kelly, Dr. Dania Thomas, Dr. Médica Ramirez, and Dr. Jennielle Médica Strother, and they will introduce themselves shortly. So what is the purpose and intention of our time together? Our roundtables are about conversations, not presentations, albeit there is a deck. So please feel free to share and engage in conversation using the chat box. If you've yet to introduce yourself, let's get that going. Who are you? What institution are you coming from? And if you want to even share your LinkedIn or email, feel free. Our goal today is to ensure that you walk away with strategies on how to engage students and build and expand education access. We know the goals set out by Texas 60 by 30 and building a talent strong Texas are very ambitious, but we're excited to bring leaders together to workshop these issues with one another. We are going to finish up with my introductions any moment, and then we're going to have a spotlight from Jennielle, who's really going to dig in to this Texas 60 by 30. We're then going to have a rich panel discussion. We will take a quick bio break, and then we'll come together intra-institutionally to discuss some panel questions. We will then wrap up just before 2 p.m. Eastern. Some Zoom best practices, although I'm sure it's old hat by now. Please make sure you're on mute. Please feel free to have your video on. It doesn't matter if you're in your home office or anywhere. We'd love to have you with your video on. And don't hesitate to use the emojis. I know we're all professionals and emojis can feel juvenile, but it also feels really nice if you're speaking and you hear something you really like, add a clap, add a smiley face, and hopefully we won't have too many tear faces. So it is my pleasure to introduce Jennielle Médica Strother, Assistant Commissioner of Student Success. And I am going to actually stop sharing and then reshare Jennielle's slides. And while I do that, Jennielle, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. It is so great to see everyone here today. I am Jennielle Strother, and I am brand new to the coordinating board. I have been here for about 5 months, but it comes after 25 years on the campus side. I am transitioning to the coordinating board after working in enrollment management and student development at various different campuses across Texas. I'm excited to share with you a little bit about building a talent strong Texas and to give you a little kind of insights into the new division of student success that I'm overseeing, and then to go into our panel discussion afterwards. Next slide, please.
Your slides, Jennielle?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Wonderful.
So building a talent strong Texas, I just want to start with some context about how talent strong Texas was developed. Texas has the 9th largest economy in the world. Over the last decade, Texans earned more degrees, certificates, and credentials than at any other time in history. We outpaced every other state in growing our undergraduate and graduate student enrollment. However, the pace of change in the Texas economy is accelerating, and the COVID-19 pandemic brought new disruptions to the workforce while changing expectations for the future. Now more than ever, a growing number of jobs require credentials beyond high school diplomas. To keep pace with the constant changes in our economy, we also need to upskill and reskill a large portion of our workforce to be able to respond to the needs of employers. In response to these changes, state officials led by the Commissioner of Higher Education, Dr. Harrison Keller, determined that 60 by 30 Texas, our previous strategic plan, should be refreshed, and that Texas should accelerate its national leadership and renewed focus on students completing degrees with purpose and value. In 2021, we at the coordinating board, in partnership with the Texas Higher Education Foundation, launched a project to update our state strategic plan for higher education. Stakeholder engagement was a major cornerstone of the process for developing Talent Strong Texas Plan. We held 10 virtual listening sessions across Texas, each sponsored jointly by our university and community college and/or Chamber of Commerce in that region. In total, we connected with hundreds of employers, higher education leaders, policymakers, and other stakeholders, both through these sessions and in other more focused discussions. We engaged leading state and national experts, and we polled the public to better understand what these different audiences need and expect from Texas colleges and universities. Next slide, please. After working to integrate what we learned during stakeholder engagement, a new strategic plan was developed and approved by the board in January of 2022. The new plan, Building a Talent Strong Texas, isn't just an update to the 60 by 30 plan, but a bolder, market-driven vision that raises the bar for Texas higher education. The plan includes 3 primary goals or pillars: attainment of post-secondary credentials for all working age Texans, focus on post-secondary credentials of value, and strengthening of research, development, and innovation. Across these goals, the plan places an intentional emphasis on equity. Texas is one of the youngest and most diverse states in the nation. So if we're not advancing our goals equitably, we will not achieve them. The plan also elevates the importance of cross-sector collaboration. To reach these goals, we will need to work closely with public and private sector stakeholders to bring down historic silos and engage educators, institutional leaders, policymakers, employers, and students in a more meaningful way. Next slide, please. So first, our new strategic plan widens the lens on who we're committed to serving through our colleges and universities. We still have the 60 by 30 goal for young working adults ages 25 through 34, but we're also raising the bar to include a goal of 60% of working age adults, age 35 through 64 with a degree, certificate, or other post-secondary credential by 2030. This group includes a range of potential adult learners, like those who have never had the opportunity to attend college after high school, or the nearly 4 million Texans with some college credit but no credential. We also have to expand our focus to include mid-career employees who need additional skills to advance in their jobs and meet the challenging demands of Texas employers. We are also expanding the types of credentials that will be counted beyond just degrees and certificates to include other types of credentials with demonstrated value in the labor market. By expanding our attainment goals to include all working age Texans and including more types of credentials, we'll increase employment opportunities and incomes for individuals, creating a deeper talent pool for employers and aligning skills with the jobs our economy demands. Next slide, please. Second, we're broadening the scope of credentials we're considering. Now we'll include short-term and industry-recognized credentials, even skilled apprenticeships. Most importantly, we're putting an important marker down that all these credentials should be credentials of value, meaning that they translate into positive earnings for students and families. In other words, within 10 years, has the credential you earned provided you the opportunity to earn more than you would have had you gone straight into the workforce after high school? It's important to emphasize that our Building a Talent Strong Texas plan is market-driven. Texas is the first state to condition our goals for producing higher education credentials on earnings and to emphasize return on investment for students and employers. We've set a goal of producing 550,000 credentials of value a year by 2030. Another important component of that commitment to credentials of value concerns student debt. Our new goal is that by 2030, 95% of Texas students should be able to complete their undergraduate credentials with no or manageable debt, with manageable debt being that which someone could reasonably repay within 10 years, given typical earnings for that credential. Students and their families need to know, and colleges and universities need to monitor whether students take on more debt than they should. Keeping higher education affordable and debt low must be a shared responsibility among policymakers, higher education institutions, and students themselves. And this new metric will provide much clearer guidance. Next slide, please. Our previous plan was entirely silent on the R&D mission, which is striking given the role that R&D plays in our economy and the priority that the governor and the legislature have placed on it. The new plan also includes broad goals to promote R&D. We've included new goals to increase annual private and federal sponsored research by $1 billion a year and to increase our production of research doctorates to 7,500 a year, which is an important metric for strength of our university research programs. By investing in hands-on learning environments, incubators, makerspaces, software development labs, and strategic partnerships across all types of institutions, students can generate knowledge through applied research that will drive innovations and economic development. Next slide, please. We're already focused on operationalizing the new plan and making sure the organization of our agency and major programs align with our goals. If you're interested in more detail, the strategic plan is available online. In addition, we will also be releasing more resources through the end of the year. These will include a more detailed document, a technical guide with methodological information related to indicators and data dashboards that capture baseline information at a more granular level. As I mentioned before, the Division of Student Success is brand new. And when we get into the panel, I'll be able to share a little bit more about the programs that we are launching and how institutions can really engage in that process with us. We're really trying to shift the coordinating board from being a compliance only agency and instead be much more in partnering with institutions, being a resource for institutions and advocating for our institutions across the state and our students. So I really look forward to the continued conversations with you all and welcome the other panelists as we discuss this, this great state and our students and how to make sure we increase all of our completion rates throughout the state.
Thank you so much, Jennielle. I appreciate that. That was really insightful. I am now working to get back the old screen. There we go. Let me see here. Here we go. Perfect. There we are. Wonderful. Hold on one second. All right. Thank you for bearing with me. Again, I own all technological difficulties. My second monitor recently broke, and this is my new second monitor. So thank you for your patience. Just a few things about Mentor Collective. Many of you have been with us for roundtables before, but we are co-hosting this today, and we want to make sure you have a little idea about who we are. So we are a group of higher education leaders who believe that relationships are at the center of student success. We are an impact investment of the Lumina Foundation, along with other education leaders who really believe that access, equity, and opportunity should not be determined by where you live, where you were born, how you identify, or any of those other variables. We also have three main pillars by which we work. We have a research arm to ensure that all of our mentorship programs are based in best practices and we can assess outcomes. We have technology that allows us to match and run programs at scale. And we have a wonderful services component that allows partner institutions a team of individuals to help run programs so that institutions can focus on interventions versus logistics of running programs. The really neat thing about being around for so long and impacting so many students is that we're able to look at our impact in quantitative ways. We measure sense of belonging, retention, MELT, and as you can see across our programs and the meta-analyses we've run, we have great impact on all of these. So institutions looking to address these concerns, sense of belonging for students, retention, or MELT, mentorship is really a great proven way to make that happen. And then I wanted to take just a moment to highlight something really exciting happening in Houston. Partner Up Houston by Mentor Collective is a new partnership where we're going to be connecting professionals in the Houston area from over 900 businesses with over 2,000 undergraduate students to help them move forward in their career and build career self-efficacy. This is a first of its kind mentorship program that's looking to really bridge career outcomes with community collaboration and build a talent pipeline, because right now we know that that is a buzzword, the pipeline. Some have said it is leaking. We are really looking for ways to fix that. This is a partnership between the city and Mentor Collective and all of these businesses. If you are with a major city in Texas and you find this framework interesting, please feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to discuss how to make that happen. So now it is my pleasure to turn things over to my colleague, George White, who is the Managing Director of Student Access and Success at Lehigh, and lucky guy, retired, and now is a Senior Advisor with Mentor Collective. George, welcome.
Thanks, Vanessa. And I have the pleasure of having the panel introduce themselves and telling you a little bit about themselves. And as you do, panelists, if you could just, for the three of you who are working at a higher ed institution, give a little bit of background on your institution, that would be helpful. Size, location, type of students that you serve. So Frank, we'll start with you.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Frank Kelly. I'm the Associate Dean for the Undergraduate Business Program at the Bauer College of Business, University of Houston, main campus. We have 6,400 undergraduate business majors. About half of them are transfer students. About 40% are first generation in college. We have no ethnic majority. It's a very diverse, probably one of the most diverse programs in the country. A high percentage, more than 50% of female. Most of them are on Pell Grants, and most of them are working students to put themselves through school. So it's a very diverse group and a challenge that we'll address in a minute.
Thanks, Frank. I appreciate that. And we're looking forward to hearing from you as you talk to us more about the work that you're doing. Jennielle, how about you? Would you do us the favor of introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your institution?
Sure. Good afternoon, all. I'm Jennielle Thomas. Did I unmute myself?
You're good.
Okay. All right. Thanks. I have the pleasure of serving as the Vice President for Enrollment and Student Success here at Texas Southern University. Texas Southern University is an elite HBCU of the South, where we believe in transforming lives and achieving our motto of excellence in achievement. Texas Southern University is one of the largest HBCUs in the United States, and we all know that we're conveniently located in the great city of Houston. Our student population, of course, we do have a large majority who are Pell eligible and first generation students, but we are happy to pride ourselves in what we consider the community connectiveness, and which is the attribute or the step of what we offer in terms of enhancing our student success and student initiatives.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And Médica, if you would introduce yourself to us, please.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, George. Yes, I'm Médica Ramirez. I'm the president of Laredo College, not San Jacinto College. Sorry about that, y'all. But I'm new to the job. I've been here since July 1st officially. And prior to that, I was the vice president for student success at Texas A&M International University here in Laredo as well. And so this has been a very exciting opportunity for me, and certainly for some of my dear friends in the community who have been helping me through this process. I will say we have about, we're celebrating here at Laredo College, our 75th anniversary as an institution. About 84% of our student population is on full Pell Grant. So we're definitely meeting the challenging needs of our community. We have about 9,200 students currently enrolled. About 3,500 of those are dual credit students. They're still in high school. And so, but they are, many of them coming to our campus, especially for our workforce programs. And so we have a very unique and wonderful relationship with both of our large school districts and several of our charter schools in town. So it's been fun, and we're certainly working towards making huge strides on developing new programs, especially within our workforce. And so thank you all for having me. I've been in higher ed now this is my 22nd year. And so many of my former colleagues are online. So I'd like to give a shout out to them. So it's great to always see friendly faces. Thank you all. And thank you for the invitation, Alexandria.
Great, and thank you, Menita. And Jennielle, you already gave us a little bit of background. Anything else you would like to add to that?
Yes, I would like to add a thanks to everybody who is here participating. I know how busy you all are, and to take the time out to really be thinking about this deeply and engaging in this conversation is to be applauded, and I appreciate all of y'all's time.
Thank you very much. And so a little bit about the format before we begin. I have a series of questions that we will pose to each of the panelists. We ask the panelists to speak and provide some detailed information that can be beneficial to you. Our goal is that each of you who are in the participant audience will have at least one thing that they can take back to their institution and begin to use quickly to help them around the area of enrollment and enrollment management. We also are monitoring the chat box. So if one of our panelists says something that you want more information on, when they're not speaking, they'll be monitoring the chat box and can provide feedback to you. And then finally, if you have a question that you'd like to have asked, just send me a note on the chat box and I'll try to bring you into the conversation. And the way I'll do that is I'll ask you to unmute and then ask your question to one of the panelists. And so without further ado, what I'd like to do is to begin with Menita. A key theme of the Building a Talent Strong initiative is to think more broadly about who higher ed serves. We know two-year institutions across the country enroll more than half of all Latinx and Native American students, and in higher ed, nearly half of all Asian American and Black students. As a president of a two-year institution and a previous senior leader at four-year institutions, what unique insights could you offer both the two-year and the four-year leaders to expand access and prioritize equity to serve today's students?
Okay, George, that's like the $1 million question, right? Thank you very much for the question, and I'll see if I can do some justice to some of that. Firstly, in Texas, we all know that students in the 8th grade are now told that they have to pick a pathway in the 8th grade. I don't know if you all remember what you were doing in the 8th grade, but if I had to pick my career in the 8th grade, I don't think I'd be sitting here today, for sure. And so we have to be very cognizant that students have been, I think, and I don't know if the word pigeonhole is the right way to put it, but they've been actually guided into a pathway that they may or may not be ready for the rest of their lives. Many students, I think, early on think that they're going to be actors and professional athletes, and these are some of the marine biologists, these are some of the fads, right? And And certainly doctors is always up there. And then reality sets in. And reality sets in when they take the physics and the chemistries, and then we have to somehow figure out what the next step for our students is in the pathway. And so I think our pathways may be a little bit deceiving. And so we need to be prepared when we're doing that initial conversation with these students who are coming in or who are getting ready to graduate. We need to be ready to have the challenging conversations with the students about what is their future really going to be like. And then taking into account that now with dual credit in Texas, so many of our students are graduating with so many hours, and that may or may not be attributed to the right pathway that they're really going to take, and not the one they picked in the 8th grade. And so we need to have those careful conversations with our students. So advising is very critical at the moment that students come in to you as freshmen. And we're talking here about traditional students. The non-traditional student are those students that may have graduated from high school and didn't go to college after that. They took, I don't know, 15 hours or 18 hours of dual credit and then decided college wasn't for them. And now they're back 2 years later or 4 years later, and they're saying, I really need to do something and figure out what I'm going to do with my life. So that takes a completely different pathway. And most community colleges have to be all things to all people. And having the advisors, having the admissions advisors and counselors available to provide those articulated conversations about where they currently are, being able to negotiate that, and then move into, all right, this is the pathway you're going to go. And so we've got two different perspectives here, one being your traditional student, and then how do you, once you get them into a community college, how do you have those articulated transfer agreements with the 4-year institutions to get them fully out and into a full career? If we're going to meet the demands of the state, our economic development workforce, if we're going to be able to be prepared, talent strong, as our commissioner says, then if we're not capable of creating both the hard skills and the soft skills of individual students, we're not going to be able to move them into the workforce. We have to have panels of advisors from our workforce so that they're advising us about what is the next step for these students, because they're the ones that are going to hire them. So career services plays a critical role, whether it's a traditional student or a non-traditional student, because everybody wants to know that once they finish college, whatever they're getting, whether they're getting reskilled or retooled, or they're getting an associate's degree and moving on to a 4-year institution, they want to know, what's the job for me after that, and how much money am I going to make? That's the critical thing. How much money am I going to make? Unfortunately, higher ed was not prepared for COVID. I don't think anybody was prepared for COVID. And as leaders of higher education, I think we all have to now rethink not only what we're doing in our day-to-day operations, but what are we doing in planning for the unexpected? And so there's a lot there to pull out, but as we articulate these agreements with 4-year institutions, it's critical that we keep the demands and the needs of our community, and then we keep the demands and the needs of our individual students at the heart of everything we do. So thank you.
Okay. So lot to unpack there. One of the things that I think is a takeaway is the critical role of advisement and advisors early on in the process and then throughout the process. Menita, I'll come back to you in a little while and ask, how do you go about, and so be thinking about this, or others also, how do you go about preparing the advisors in a way that they can best serve the student needs? But Frank, your institution has sort of taken a different approach. So your campus, CT Bauer College of Business, has invested in a growing culture of mentorship, pairing transfer and sophomores with upper class students with a focus on student success, and then a career-focused program matching upper class students with alums. So it sounds like there's a multi-tiered mentoring program that you have in place. Why were large-scale mentorship programs focused on student success and career engagement, especially engaging with alumni, the right solution for your institution? And then as a follow-up, how does mentorship align with your larger strategic goals in continuing to promote student-centered education?
So the word large scale is definitely appropriate with the 6,400 undergraduate business majors. We have had a culture of mentoring through specialty programs. For example, our Wealth Center for Entrepreneurship, we have a leadership certificate program. We actually have a first-year experience program that has upperclassmen paired with our freshman incoming students. We also have our student organizations that they themselves develop mentor programs. But what we were noticing is that that was only addressing the need for a smaller percentage of our students. We had what was called that invisible student working. They would come to class, they would pass through our hallways, they would come for advising, but really were not engaged. The fact that we are so diverse also created a sense that students would not have a sense of belonging. And as we're all familiar with the high impact practices, mentoring provides a meaningful relationship for someone to experience belonging, and belonging translates into retention, timely graduation, and overall student success. It aligns with our strategic goals in the sense that 2 years ago, we had a new dean come in, and top of mind for him was a mentor program. So we had support at the very top, and he partnered with our advisory board, who are C-suite executives, to really get buy-in from them, and started a pilot mentoring program with our MBA, our graduate students. And that gave us buy-in. So if there's a takeaway from my presentation or panel discussion, I think it's pilot program, getting buy-in from the top, building it into your strategic goals. Now, in terms of our growing that beyond those siloed programs, with Mentor Collective, we've now been able to offer up to 500 mentor matches. Our near peer upperclassmen partnered with our freshman, sophomore, we call them pre-business students. And then for that same group of upperclassmen, pairing them with alum. And our hope is that we'll have up to 1,000 mentor matches by November. And it's been a really successful rollout over the first few weeks here of the semester. So in terms of scale, my suggestion is start with a pilot program and then partner with an institution that can provide the infrastructure and technological and research support that you need. We have not had to hire any new staff because of that back-end support. And one of our key strategic goals is accessibility, and especially reaching transfer students as well as freshmen, because they really only have 2.5, at best 3 years with us, and getting them connected from that 2-year institution, as mentioned there earlier with Laredo College. So that would be my takeaway.
Great. Frank, you share some real important pieces of information there. The go slow to go fast, pilot to then build it in. And I love the language of building it into your strategic initiative, your strategic goals, so to speak, I think is important. The other piece that I really think is something that we should all be looking at is the connection between getting them in, your freshmen and your transfer students, and then also connecting with alums and bringing them into the program because they have the real world experience. And so mentorship at both ends of the continuum really is an interesting concept and an interesting idea. I'll be real excited to see what kind of results you end up with out of that program. Dania, I'm going to come to you now. And again, I want to remind the folks in the audience, if you have questions for any of our panelists, feel free to put them in the chat box and they will either answer them or I'll call on some people to ask their question for the group. Dania, as a leader who is passionate about enrollment and student success, your holistic enrollment management efforts take a panoramic approach to the student journey, yes, from admission to first year, to the first year experience, and then beyond all the way through graduation. Can you share some specific examples that will help us go from enrolling students, getting them in the door, to serving students as we move them through what we've come to know as the pipeline? What does this look like in practice, and what have you found that works? And conversely, have you found some things that you thought would work and don't work?
Thank you for the question. I think it's an interesting question that is also multifaceted. And as I think about it, I think that central to particularly because we are an HBCU, is that connectiveness and that familial development or that culture that is created. And when I say that, it's because students are actually, when we think about this, the individual, we look at students as individuals, people first, who are students. So in answering that initially, I think that it's important for us to understand that where we are, our culture and our community that we're serving. One of the things that we want to stress, particularly as you ask about how do we move from serving, from just enrollment to serving, we have to understand that, or the way that our paradigm, we have to have a paradigm shift or understand it, if we want to say intellectually or also physiologically. We look at it from the whole person, and I like to say it like this. It is what we see, what we taste, what we smell, what we touch. And it's something that you just can't put your finger on. It's not something that you can actually define. It's just that you know that it is there. So an underpinning of providing the service is the support. Not only do we serve, but we support by being that bridge or that foundation in order to help the individuals and the students to develop. And when we do that by providing the guidance and whatever supports are necessary in order to meet the students where they are. We see them, this is how you are, and then it's our job to accelerate that so that they will leave here with a sense of scholarly identity. So when they come in, we want them, it's important for us to ensure that they know that they are accomplished and that they can be in whatever aspect it is that they, or whatever area or endeavor it is that they choose. So how do we do that, or some specific examples? And I think I kind of shared that, maybe I don't want to sound redundant, but it is just to see the students just where they are. Everyone comes in with a different approach to learning, a different approach to involvement and engagement. but we have to see you where you are, and you develop that family or that familial relationship to create that sense of belonging and that connectedness, not only to the institution, but to those who are supporting and serving you within the institution, to help you to develop that trust and developing that rapport and the relationships. And one thing that I would say is these relationships are lifelong. They last beyond just that 4-year or 2-year, if they're transfer, that time frame that they are here, or of the life cycle of the student, so to speak. And it is cyclical, if you understand. So it's a constant give back. That's why the alumni engagement is very it's very important. It's intentional, and it's very strong.
So I want to do a little bit of a follow-up here, because you hit on a key piece, and that is that to some extent we have to do a paradigm shift from enrolling students only to looking at the student from pre-enrollment all the way through, and the work that we all do. You mentioned getting to know the student. Are there specific strategies or tactics that either in your previous work life or in your current environment you've seen that really works at making sure you get to know who those students are so that you can customize the programming for them?
I've had the privilege of serving from the gamut of K-12 through the State Department and a 2-year institution to Research One, Master's Comprehensive, and HBCU. So I'm excited to have that type of experience that I do bring into my role here. One of the key or central components, I will say, if there is a thing or a strategy, so to speak, at every level, is establishing that rapport and building trust, which initially takes time. It takes just a few minutes of time, just time, that someone wants to be heard, they believe that they're heard, and they feel a sense that you value them. As if you're dealing with parents, if you're dealing with the individual student themselves. So a lot of times you have to initially engage in the opportunity, which I do consider it an opportunity, to listen and to hear and to validate that the individual has been heard about what it is that they want to do with their quote unquote life, so to speak. And although that may change over the course of their development, that's okay. But to let them know that that is the human factor, or if I could say that's what it is, it's the humanness that I think is the actual bridge builder, or is that underpinning that would help us to, I believe, to answer that question. People have to know that you care.
Okay.
And that's essentially it. They want to feel that you care about them.
Yeah, that's great. And what you've just said ties very clearly back to what Frank talked about in terms of mentorship.
Yes.
And what Médica talked about in terms of the importance of advisors.
Yes.
So there is a human connection, a one-on-one, that the student, from the time they connect with us all the way through their process, there's someone in the institution who knows them and knows them well.
Yes.
All right, that's real helpful.
Thank you.
Jennielle, you shared in the opening that the building a talent strong Texas means developing a workforce that meets employers' current and future needs and expands individual opportunities. So here's the $10 million question. How can institutions, all of our people that are on this call, partner with you and your department to support the full student life cycle and prepare students for the current and future workforce? I mean, we know that the majority of jobs that students are going to have in their career haven't been invented yet. So how does a higher ed institution work with an organization like yours to bridge those gaps?
$1 million question for sure. I think, thank you for the question though, George. It's important to recognize that as we're developing, as an agency with new leadership, that we're really trying to make that shift into becoming, to continue being an advocate, being a resource and partner in these sorts of initiatives. In particular, I think how institutions can work with the agency is, and many of you all are already doing that, but it's to engage with us in various programs that we have launched, which has been a lot lately because of the GEAR funding that we have been able to leverage in the field. But in particular with workforce, I think that everybody, on the call understands that employers want to work with students who not only have that academic, foundation, but they also are equipped with skills to compete in the future global market. And so one of the things that this is accomplished through is, clear pathways for students, academic knowledge, but also experiencing that learning with various job shadowing opportunities, internships, apprenticeships, and the coordinating board through our workforce development division has been working very closely with the tri-agency, so with TEA and workforce development, and coming up with innovative programs to try to help institutions in turn helping students. We have a work study student mentorship program, and that's where students will receive an hourly wage to mentor, tutor, and advise peers, first-year students. Another program that we have at the coordinating board is Texas Works, which is a statewide paid internship program. And so employers have agreements directly with the coordinating board, and we as in the coordinating board contributes $10 to the $20 hourly wage for students who earn a position within that program. And so I think it's really important, and those sorts of programs, the innovation and just the development of those programs came through an open dialogue in the field. And, we really, and especially being brand new at the coordinating board, I value having folks, give us the realities of what's going on a campus. And you do that through dialogue with us. One of the first things that I started once I started the agency was develop a student success advisory work group. And while we've only met 2 or 3 times, it's really our opportunity to connect with the field and have them guide us in this work. So and again, this sort of conference, this sort of dialogue is really important. So I would say the takeaway, I'm going to take guidance from Frank on how he kept going, the takeaway is for you all to know that our emails are open. I want to hear from you and really understand what's going on in campuses with you and your students so that we can advocate and help partner with resources to make great things happen.
And so, Jennielle, it sounds like there are some really interesting programs that universities can participate in with you in terms of whether it's the support for advisors or it's the internship experience. And I guess what I would say is for everyone in the audience, if you have an idea, if you want to share something, reach out to Jennielle and let her know, because they get better when they have interaction with you. And that's that partnership that I heard her mention. So thanks for sharing that. I appreciate that. Frank, I'm coming back to you. Again, we talked about the nature of the student body that you serve and how young Texas collectively is as an as a state. How do you serve all students from their first touch point with your institution? So I'm thinking about going to college. Let me get a touch point with you, all the way through graduation and what I heard you say earlier, beyond. And how do you do that with an emphasis on those students who have been marginalized traditionally by the education system?
Going back to Danaya's keyword relationship, I'd like to emphasize that it begins very early in the educational pipeline, K through 12, and building relationships with schools, principals, but also with students through campus visits. We have summer institutes for high school students. Some are residential, some are day camps on things like financial literacy and college access. We use an application called Texas Reality Check that looks at, well, what kind of a lifestyle are you wanting when you're an adult? And then what kind of professions can provide you with that kind of income? And what kind of education do you need in college? And then what kind of courses in high school and middle school should you be taking time to do extra homework and study to do your best and maximize your potential? We also have partnerships with corporate partners for summer bridge programs, so that once they come to U of H, they get into a pipeline that leads to internships. We also look at how we can emphasize those soft skills for especially first generation students, and doing that through our orientation, what we would consider their very first touch with us as an admitted student. And then throughout their first year, I mentioned we have a freshman year experience program. We call it Emerging Leaders Academic Success Program. You can't lead others if you haven't really managed your time and your goals. So you emerge into leadership by being academically successful. We also have a software platform that we embed what is called the NACE 8, National Association of Colleges and Employers, have identified the top 8 soft skills: teamwork, leadership, technology, communication, critical thinking, diversity and inclusion, those kinds of soft skills. And we call it Bauer Plus. And it's for a generation that is tech savvy, social media savvy, to pull in that invisible student. And the fact that we are so diverse, we really are hoping to reach that underserved population that you asked about.
That's really very interesting. That last piece is, it goes to beyond the content of the courses. We can learn to be accountants, we can learn to be economists, we can learn to be physicists, but really one of the first times I've heard institutions talking about consciously working on the soft skills are the people skills, because those are the skills that, as Jennielle said earlier, those are the skills that are going to serve you no matter what career or job you go into. You're going to need them to move forward. And I think the other takeaway for me is, as a former principal and superintendent, that early partnership with schools, so that it's not I'm now in high school and that's over, and now I'm in college and that's something new, but there's a transitional process. I really appreciate you pointing that out. I think that that's crucial. So as we move forward then, one of the things that I keep hearing over and over again is it's relationships, stupid. It's relationships, it's relationships, it's relationships. So we know that student voice is important when we talk about developing relationships. It's also important when we develop, refine, and evaluate how we recruit and retain our students for our institution. So Jennielle, how are you leveraging student insights to make prospective students' first contact more meaningful? What have you done specifically that partners in this room can take away and use that may be helpful for them?
I think that all of us engage in the standard of the typical surveys, and we get the feedback from our preview days, our campus visits, when students and families come to visit. But what I think is something that is a little bit more strategic that we like to use is the feedback. And again, it's back to that connectiveness that we actually use our students as a part of our recruitment paradigm, or as a part of our recruitment enterprise. And what we do there with taking students, not only because we do have our student leadership, as we develop them over time, which are our upperclassmen, those who are a part of our SGA, those are a part of our, kings and queens and our royal court and whatnot, the presidents of our student campus organizations. They are also a part of our new student orientations, a part of our campus visits when we go to schools to recruit, and they offer that perspective. Also, what I have found in this age, and we all know, the social media information and that relationship that is established early on when students first meet has been a phenomenal tool in terms of recruiting and retaining our students. It first gathers the interest because the students are on there and they can do a video while we're standing here right now. They will have that video completed and have it sent out to their group chat that they have created while we're all sitting here right now in, lightning speed, I call it. So that has been one of the, if we could have a takeaway, I think using our students and through this social media age to help with that particular, as a strategy, is paramount in gaining and also retaining. That goes back to, and what is so interesting about it, we talk about the formalized peer process, mentoring, engagement and initiatives that we do collect on campus, but that is an informal type of peer relationship. And they're able to find out information, and again, lightning speed, that how do I get to so-and-so's classroom? Quick, it's done. For example, where they, and again, it's just about, again, continuing that type of a relationship.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Social media.
And using social media,
Yes.
and using what current marketing folks are doing to customize and personalize through social media the marketing strategies to say what's unique about you and what's unique about us that has that partnership. I think that's what I'm taking away from what you just said, Dania. Thank you. I want to cycle back to Médica and the focus now on two-year institutions, and specifically around workforce or industry-based education. Let's look at this through an institutional and an equity lens. How can we expand awareness of high-paying, on-demand opportunities to ensure students are on the right path to secure these opportunities, whether it's post-degree, certificate, or credential? And here's an opportunity to bring back in that role that you talked about in terms of your advisors from your career workforce. I think that would be helpful for us to hear a little bit more about.
Thank you, George. And yes, so, we're right now trying to recreate our advising system here. And one of the things that we're doing is, I think all community colleges in Texas are required to admit everyone. So we have to accept people, as Jennielle mentioned, we're going to accept people where they are, and we're going to take them from the known to the new, right? That's our responsibility. We're going to bridge those gaps. We're going to fill in the gaps, and then we're going to hopefully come out at the other end with a final product that is a better version of the purpose of the person that came in. And so what I've learned in my, now 40 years of being in education, 40 plus years of being in education, several things are critical. One is the development of your personnel. If you are not developing your people, and many of you that are on this call do it often, and I know that many of you get on programs like this, but if you're not giving the opportunity for your subordinates to do the same, then you're missing out on opportunities, because they need to have the skill set, just like we're going to give skill sets to our students. We need to have those that are working with the students to have the proper skill sets that they need to give that proper information. One of the questions I was asked is, are students involved in conversations prior to selecting a pathway, right? Well, in the 7th and 8th grade, maybe a middle school counselor may talk to somebody, but they're not aware of what's out there for them. So when you get invited to middle school campuses to go to career day, it's imperative that you participate, because if not, how are you getting the information out there? And so how do we develop the concepts and ideas for them if we're not giving them that information? So I guarantee you, a middle school counselor has very little time to be exploring careers for people after they graduate from college. It's not, they don't have that kind of time.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
So how do we've got to develop our people. You've got to develop the proper engagement opportunities between our employees and the student. Now, when students are applying for college, whether it's a community college or a four-year institution, that summer bridge is critical. The folks we're servicing today are already questioning the value of the work that we're doing in higher education. And so if we're not seeking those people out before they graduate from high school, while they're enrolled in our dual credit programs, if we're not seeking them out, then we're missing the boat, because they're not gonna, they may or may not go. And if they show up, they may, and if you're not available at the moment they want you, thanks to social media, they go away and they don't come back. And they find other things to do or other pathways. And so unfortunately, not only do we have to bridge the gaps, we've got and train the leaders of tomorrow and become the technology experts, and we've got to provide them with those pathways after they make that selection. Now, what I always tell parents and students is, just because you did maybe a high school pathway in medical services, that doesn't mean that you can't be a fireman. You know, you can change. What you did in high school isn't going to define you for the rest of your life. But here's the thing. If we're not training our staff to give that kind of information, even though it may take a little bit longer, because it will take longer than, oh no, you're in the medical, here you go. There's your new schedule. No, we have to train our advisors, our recruiters, our admission specialists, our faculty. And then once you get them, you've got to use your faculty to do the advising. That's one of the things we've started here at Laredo College, is that we're using 3 hours of the faculty's office hours are going to be spent in what we're calling class. It's a Center for Learning and Development and Student Success of our students. Our faculty have to spend 3 hours a week of their office hours there just to mentor students, possibly tutor, possibly whatever it is, they're gonna spend it there. So hopefully I've given you some ideas and some support and some help. So I hope
And
that
that
answers the question.
That last piece is crucial. It's not just saying to our faculty, we want you to do this, but giving them the tools and the skill set in order to effectively advise and helping them connect with the people in the workforce, especially around two-year institutions where credentialing and certificates are as important anymore as the degree. So that's helpful. And I would challenge all of us to think about how we can do that effectively. Jennielle, I'm coming to you, and then Frank, you're going to get the last question. So the goals of Texas 60-30 and building a talent strong Texas elevate critical importance of post-secondary education and here's the key, continued skill development, emphasizing equity, particularly for individual Texans between the ages of 25 and 64. That's a pretty good size spread. How can institutions and leaders and employers work with the coordinating board to increase access and to demonstrate the value of these certificates and post-secondary credentials, especially for non-traditional students?
Well, there's lots of million-dollar questions, George. I think one of the things that I'm reminded of after, sitting with you all here today is that we're in a real critical time in higher education. We have to do things differently. We more than ever have to work together in order to succeed and to make sure our students succeed. And I've really have been seeing that shift of this dialogue and conversations in which, how can I help you and your team with an initiative that we launched so that you can implement it on your campus. One of the things at the coordinating board, so the student success division, and as I mentioned, is brand new. We have had several initiatives that were funded in the first round of GEAR funds, and real focused on trying what we don't understand across the state is what student success programs are working, what evidence-based programs are moving the needle. We know they're out there. We know you all are all doing that work, but from a state's perspective and really understand those evidence-based practices, how can we scale those statewide and really understand the ROI, the return on investment in serving students. And so part of the first round of our GEAR funds was initiatives to really dig into the research first. And second is to understand across the state what programs you all would consider your top 5 student success programs. And so we canvassed the state. We are working now on the first iteration of our student success program inventory, where that will be uploaded into our OER Texas for a student success hub. And the reason why I'm sharing that right now is because from everything that I'm getting from this conversation and the initiatives that each of my panelists are sharing, we all want to take these things home and try to implement within the context of our own institutions. And that community of practice is something that we want to facilitate and be a part of through the state. So engaging everyone across the state to understand what programs are working. And with this first iteration, we'll have approximately 150, 175 programs that will roll out here in the next month. And then on top of that, so the question is, how can we engage, how can the field engage with the coordinating board on student success initiatives one way you've already done that is through the inventory. We've also launched a planning grant program that we had almost 80 institutions participate in. So just the sheer number of institutions who said, yes, thank you, give us, help us leverage time and resources so that we can think deeply about student success and the data necessary in order to move that needle. We will have a implementation RFA, implementation grant RFA that will launch here in the next week. And we hope that that will also help really try to identify these practices in which all of you all are engaging in to help students succeed across the state in the various interventions that we've talked about. And so again, that it's really the position that I think from a student success perspective that I'm trying to communicate here is how can you engage? You are engaging, but also that we are collecting this information. We are thinking deeply about it. We're trying to get a research evidence-based approach on what is working so that we can share it and build this community of practice so that we're, as practitioners, we are all using them and can learn from each other.
Very helpful, and that coordination process is crucial. We sometimes think that we're out there as individuals by ourselves, and yet many of us have tried some of these things before and they work well or with some populations. And for your organization to sort of bring all that information together under one roof and make it readily accessible is real helpful. I just want to alert people that there's a really good set of dialogue taking place in the chat box. And so if you haven't been following that, take a look at that while we turn the last question over to Frank. And Frank's going to talk to us a little bit about, he already mentioned it once, one of those practices that we do know that works and is a high impact practice for especially lower income students or students who are at risk, and that's mentorship. And so as one of the newest partners with Mentor Collective, what are you looking forward to in your mentoring program? And how are you using their dashboard, their data resources to help you move your program further along?
So let me backtrack on the word relationships, because sometimes there's this idea that technology is replacing relationships, but I've found that the dashboard and the monitoring components of Mentor Collective actually facilitates of those relationships and see how they're going. And so it tells me how many students have actually signed up, taken the survey, done the training, and that's so critical to have a program that has accessible training, and then the matching, and then how many emails or meetings, either in person or through other venues, have the students paired up or paired up with alumni. And then that data leads to assessment, and particularly with Mentor Collective's research base, that is something I'm really looking forward to. And it kind of feeds into, if I can take just a second to respond to Todd Romero's question about silos and how do you get collaboration. Again, the word is pilot programs that then are collaboratively shared across your campus, and then embedding it within your organizational structure and your strategic plan. It can't be silos because we've got too much of a challenge. I think also the emphasis on grants to get those pilots going. The reason we were able to get started was a provost grant. So thank you for Texas, the Higher Ed Coordinating Board, and your initiatives in that regard.
That's great, Frank. Thank you. I think we've taken a lot away from this panel discussion, but it's only the first part of our two-part program today. So first of all, I want to thank all the panelists for being candid and honest and upfront and sharing some things that work and some of the experiences that you've learned from. It's been very helpful and very informative, I think, to all of the participants.